Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Nadal Danoon, and I'll be chairing your next session. Just to remind you, I guess after afternoon tea is just for housekeeping, just to make sure your mobile phone or smartphone switched off to silent. And just to make sure that's, because obviously there's a switch between the rooms, it's a hot topic session, so we had the superannuation session, just to make sure everybody's in the right room. And the next session would be Part 4A, which also a hot topic session. Okay. Well, it seems I haven't seen anybody walking out, so everybody's in the right room. Great. All right. Well, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Mark Payne from HWL Epsworth Taxation Group. Mark provides advice to Australian and international clients on a broad range of taxation, superannuation and financial services related area, with a particular emphasis on SMSFs. I think I have someone else's quiet. Okay, well, anyway, all I can say, I mean, I know Mark personally, and we've presented several times. Mark is an expert in this space and has presented several times and received great feedback. So take my word for it, but I'm sure you'll get the same conclusion in a minute. I don't know whose James Pettigrew is, but I'm sure he's also very good. But we have Mark Payne with us this afternoon, so please join me in welcoming Mark. Thank you.
I do know James, and he is very good, and I think he did the first session this morning on dividends and 254T, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about superannuation, and as Nadal mentioned, my particular emphasis is self-managed super funds, so that'll be the main focus of my discussion today. Really what I want to do is give a quick snapshot of the key changes, but really focus on some of the recent announcements in terms of the super surcharge exposure draft that was released on the 1st of May. Talk about the ATO rectification in education directions that commence from 1 July. Touch on related party transactions, and you can still do off-market transfers up until 30 June. So there's a one-off opportunity to do that in self-managed super funds before the rules change. And touch on the capped income exemption, and then finally have a more of a sort of thought out loud about Part 4A and how the new Part 4A changes will impact on superannuation, if at all. At the time I wrote this, I wasn't sure whether there would be any further changes in the budget. The good news is that there wasn't. That's mainly because on the 5th of April they brought forward their budget announcements and brought them all out in the open. So there's no further changes in the budget, which in and of itself is a good thing to say, given the level of change we have in this area. In terms of other announcements that were made prior, obviously the cap on the tax exemption for earnings, and I'll touch on that in more detail, will be important. For those who are earning over $100,000 in their super fund, essentially there's going to be a tax at the concessional rate of 15%, and I'll talk about how that can actually work in practice, particularly with some of the other changes. The super surcharge exposure draft was released on the 1st of May. It still commences on the 1st of July 2012, notwithstanding that it's only just been released in exposure draft form. Whether that's part of the budget processes and that will change later, I don't know, but it is applying now, and I'll take you through that. The related party transactions we've had for a while. We understand what the changes are, particularly in relation to off-market transfers. The big concern here has really been around the opportunity for manipulation in self-managed super funds. I don't know if many of you have ever heard of the 3-month rule that sometimes brokers talk about or have been used in the past, but what was the main concern with off-market transfers is the reason for the change is the ability to manipulate both the date and the value of a transaction. And that was stated in the EM, not suggesting that it happened on a widespread scale, but certainly that was the concern, and that's why we're seeing these changes. ATO